Hello, everyone. My name is Chris, and I'll be introducing you to advanced deployments. And I don't know if you've heard of feature flags before, but they're kind of like the new trend in industry. Like a lot of big tech companies are using them to release features. So just a bit about myself. I'm a ex-software engineering student, and I did this course when I was in 2019, so it's been a while. And my day job is as a software engineer at Atlassian, and I'm currently working on the stats and metrics team. But before I was on the experimentation platform, so we were building tools to release features to customers in a measured way and safely. And we were providing internal tooling to help Atlassians run small multivariate tests before they decide whether to roll out a feature or not. Yeah, like Nick stated, I'm helping out with this course. I used to be a mentor, but now I'm just doing consulting sessions. So if you ever need any help with feature flags or anything in general, just email me and I'll set up a small meeting. I'm quite passionate about feature management and DevOps. So I think 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I decided to build a small feature management platform, which is open source, and I'll be using the platform. So in today's session, we'll go through traditional deployment strategies, and I'll highlight some of the pain points that we face when releasing features using these strategies, and then I'll introduce you to feature flags, and I'll do a demo, and we'll go into the nitty-gritty of how flags are being evaluated, and I'll show you what the server actually sees and returns when you're to your application. Okay, a lot of these diagrams are pretty old, so I'll go through Excalibur, and I'll do a ad hoc whiteboarding session. So the 9 of yous that are in the lecture, just put your hand up and interrupt me if I'm not explaining a concept properly, or if you're interested in something. So let's define what a deployment actually is. A deployment is basically just the process of releasing features to your users. And traditionally, a lot of these deployment strategies were based on branches. So one really popular deployment branching strategy is called Git flow. I think some of you have heard of this before. It's basically where you have a feature branch and you have a bunch of other stage branches where you merge your changes into. And so a common developer workflow would look like, hey, I'm working on a feature, maybe it's a new navigation or something. I check out a feature branch, and then I'll merge it into develop after raising a pull request. And in develop, I can see it in staging or user accept, in my staging environment. And if that's all good and everyone if the feature is working as expected, we'd merge that into the release branch. So that can be the main branch or something that has some branch that has the most stable changes. And if there is a problem with my feature, instead of going through develop and then releasing, I can create a hotfix branch and I can merge that into develop, or and the release branch as well. So it just avoids me having to go through the staging and the UAT process, and I can quickly get bug fixes out. But the problem with this workflow is all users are affected when we release that change. So hotfixes, you might be able to quickly merge out of master and merge in your hotfix branch to the release branch, but it'll take some time to release that. So you can't really revert your change that quick. It's still dependent on the time it takes to deploy your changes out to users. So a solution that folks came up with was incorporating traffic splitting in deployments. So one very popular, it used to be popular, strategy was blue-green deployments, and you have two stages. The blue system is the current version, and the green system is the new application version. And you have a router that sits in front of each application version and just routes. It's just used to control what the user actually sees. So you can have the green system just temporarily route to your development team for a certain time until you can verify your changes are working, and then you can switch out, like just point the router to use the green system once you've verified all your changes are working. So like the users are basically switched to the new system after it's been thoroughly tested. But the problem with blue-green deployments is that, like, once there is some bad changes in your release, your new version, all users are still affected, so you still have to switch out. It takes less time than actually deploying a new version of the system, but it's still like affecting a lot of your users. So the solution for that was only release a percentage of release your new system to a percentage of users. So this is where canary deployments came in, and this is quite popular still. I think Google made a lot of the did a lot of the groundwork to push out this strategy initially. So it's basically like blue-green deployments, but you have like some sampling that determines what percentage of users see what version of the system, and it has to be in a consistent way, so you don't switch with users between both systems every time they request to see the new application. So yeah, you basically just target a subset of your users. So only if a bad change is released, only 10% of your users will see your some X percentage, and then you can like quickly revert back to the old system. But there is a problem with canary deployments. So say, for instance, you released 5 new features in your new system. If one of your features is causing an issue, you have to revert all 5 changes when you switch to the old system. So like if feature C is broken, like all the other features, all the other new features that you just released have to be turned off while you fix feature C. So the solution is feature flags, and we're basically taking traffic splitting at a feature level. So instead of going instead of the traffic splitting happening over here on a system basis, you're doing it on a feature basis. Like a lot of companies now use this strategy of releasing features. Facebook is one of the biggest ones that like incorporates feature flagging in their products. So like your Facebook view, sorry, Meta, I keep forgetting they changed, but like your Facebook wall might be different to another Facebook, like another user's view, because Facebook is like constantly running experiments on their users. And yeah, so in order to run experiments at a granular level, you need some sort of mechanism to control what variation of a feature users see. So feature flags are really helpful with experiments. Yeah, question?
Is there a specific way that they choose which users are going to get which certain features?
Yeah, that's a really good question. A lot of analysts come up with the correct segment we should target on. So I'll go into targeting rules and how the targeting is controlled, but yeah, that's more of like a business decision. Yeah, good question. Like alternative names of feature flags are feature toggles, gates, remote config, etc. Like they're all the same. Feature flags are the most commonly used term. So what exactly is a feature flag? So it's just a point in code where you split traffic from what variation of a feature users see. So like if a flag is on, then users might see the new feature. If it's off, they might see an old feature. And this is just a simple Boolean feature flag. So, and they're commonly used in conditional statements like if statements. So this is just like a pseudocode example. Kind of looks like Python, but yeah, you basically call the feature flag using the feature flag key, the default value. So if you can't retrieve the feature flag, you default to this value. So if the server is down or the feature flag service is down, your application is still able to serve the right feature or like the default feature. So like in this case, if a new navigation is enabled, let's show users a new nav. If otherwise, just show users the old navigation. So there are like two main types of feature, like two ways we can use feature flags, release feature flags. Like one way is through a local feature store, and the feature flag values are on the actual client. So an example like of this is, I don't know if any of you've seen this before, but in Firefox and Chrome, you can configure the flags, the feature flags of your browser. So if you need to enable some advanced feature that's turned off by default, you can go into about config in Firefox or like Chrome slash flags, and you can turn on some experimental features and try that. So that's a example of local feature flags. But the problem with local feature flags, or the local flag, the feature store, is that the developer actually can't configure what variation of the user sees. So it's all configured by the user. You'll still have to release your application and change the flag values or the default flag values that are served to users. So the solution is take this feature store and move it to some remote feature store. So your application calls the flags, receives a flag set from a remote feature store, and it's configurable by developers. So the developer is actually able to change the targeting rules or like the state of a feature flag, and the application will pull it in or like stream it. So every time a flag value changes or like a rule changes, the latest flag value is served to the actual application, and you don't have to keep deploying your app and releasing it to change the feature flag values. Just one thing to be cautious about is always clean up your feature flags if they're temporary, because if you have a large flag set, we're transmitting this flag set from a remote source to the application. It'll take time to actually transmit that flag store. And at Atlassian, we've had a lot of problems with folks not cleaning up their flags. We'd have like, I think Jira has like 3 megabytes of feature flags. So on like our initial load time is just quite slow sometimes. So always clean up your feature flags. So this basically solves the problem that we saw with Canary deployments. So now we're able to like split traffic on a feature level. And there are a lot of feature flag platforms out there. Some of the most popular proprietary vendors are LaunchDarkly, StatSig, ConfigCat. Split is a pretty good one for experimentation. At Atlassian, we use LaunchDarkly. Yeah, and they're a huge vendor. It was started by ex-Atlassians. The one that I'm going to be using is a very small feature management solution that I've built. It's fully open source, so like the advantage of this is that you can provision it in your own like cloud environment. Like your customer data is not being transmitted to a third-party vendor or anything. So for compliance reasons, it's quite useful. We also focus on performance, and we stream the delta of flag changes in a compressed way. So we're focused on performance, and it's a developer-friendly design. And a lot of the APIs were inspired by the big vendors out there, so you can easily migrate. And I'll be demoing now. So I'm going to be showing you a feature flag being used in a React app that I built yesterday, and I'm going to target my user and show how targeting works. And yeah, let's get into the demo. So I don't know if any of you have used Storybooks before, but it's a pretty good tool that'll help you build front ends easily. So you can, when you're mocking out a component, you can whip up a storybook and mock out a specific component, and so you don't have to integrate into the application. So I use Storybooks for this example, but yeah, in this example, we have like a pretty bad app. It just has a navigation which looks horrible. Yep. And I've added like some info about the flag set that we're retrieving from the service and the user context that's being passed in to retrieve the evaluated flags. And this is some debugging logs and some internal stats that I think are useful. I'll push this up and I'll like show you this example, and I'll probably add it to a Confluence page in the course space. So like this is our old navigation. I built a new nav. It looks a bit prettier. Let's go into code. So here's the demo app. It looks, you don't have to, it's a React app. You don't really need to understand the React. You don't have to understand React or anything. I'll explain the core parts of the application. But we're basically initializing a client, like the feature flag client. So in this case, I'm using the flag-based client. It's all in comments right now because in order to make the storybook dynamic, I had to do a bit of hacking, like using the useState call and useEffect. So the app automatically reloads and gets the latest user attributes and user context. So we're initializing the client and we're getting the actual feature flag value. So in this case, I've added a new flag called new navigation. And if it's on, I want to show users the new navigation. So this is like a ternary statement, show new navigation if the flag is on, otherwise show the old navigation. And so this is where I'm actually using the client. So over here, just ignore everything else except for the things that I highlight. So over here, I'm actually setting the new navigation in state and passing it down to navigation entry. So this might look a bit prettier. Just assume the flag value, we're getting the flag value over here. And this is a Boolean. If it's basically the conditional I saw, I showed you in the previous page, in the previous file. So the new navigation is quite simple. It's just a dumb component. The old navigation is just a bit prettier, no, less prettier version of the new navigation component. So over here, like we have our user, which has a bunch of traits. So we might have like a user that's from New Zealand or a user that's under the age of 25, or a user that's like in some particular demography. So a user is a bunch of traits that we pass into the feature flagging client. So that's what we call the evaluation context. It's what we use to evaluate the targeting rules of a feature flag. So over here, I've used my feature flag, and I'm going to be using the REST API. So you see the data models that we're like passing into the feature flag service, etc. So I have my Postman workspace open. Right now, like I've already created the flag. It's called new navigation, and I've added it to the production environment in a example project. And we're using the flag-based API. So if I send this request, you can see there's no targeting rules. I can create a targeting rule, and a targeting rule is basically something that tells the evaluator what variation of a feature users need to see. So I can add a trait targeting rule that I'm going to target this key. So like over here, I've already have a trait key that I added. I can add something else like country and can't spell country, and it can be Australia. So I've just added another user trait. And if I go to Postman, I can add this trait, this targeting rule. And I can like target on this specific key, the some trait key. So if it's blue, I want to show 100% of users the treatment variation of the feature. Otherwise, I'll just show the default variation, which is the control variation. So variations are basically what variant of what version of the feature users are seeing. So you can have Boolean variations, true, false. It can be ABC. For A/B testing, it can be AB. Like it's just a key in this case to show which variation of that feature users see. So with flag-based, everything is bucketed. So when I say 100% of users see the treatment variation, it means every single user, when this targeting rule is evaluated to be met, will see the treatment variation. Yeah.
So when you added the key value, are you basically saying that any user that has those traits see this specific key?
Yes, we'll see that particular variation. So in this case, yeah, exactly. I'll go back, and after this demo, I'll show you what we're doing, how the evaluation happens. It's a pretty simple function. But yeah, now I've just added this targeting rule. If I go back to the targeting rules, get all the rules for this particular flag in the production environment, you can see this rule is being added, and we just need to enable targeting. So we need to tell the service actually use these rules that we've created to serve the feature variation. So I'll do a patch request to enable targeting on the new navigation flag for the production environment. And you should see internal error, patch made no difference. Oh, it should be true. So I'm enabling targeting. Okay, so I've enabled targeting. Now, magically, we're served with the new navigation. And if I go back and disable it, it should update, hopefully. Yes, the old navigation appears. So now you can see we don't really need to deploy a new version of the application. We can remotely control what variation of a feature users see. So if I change my attribute to be red instead of blue, when I retrieve the latest flag values, I should see the old navigation. Is targeting enabled? Nope. So even if I said targeting is enabled, it should be the old version of the navigation. If I set this to blue, targeting is enabled. Yep, without doing anything, the new navigation pops up. Yeah, so that's a quick demo on how you can use feature flags in your application. So like for your project, you can use feature flags to, like there's like a lot of use cases for your project specifically. Like you can add circuit breakers in the front end that you're going to be building for this phase, or you can test out different models and see which one users prefer. So maybe you can do a small experiment. Another non-common use case of feature management is monetization. No one really uses feature flags to serve premium customers, but this is something that you could do because it's not very consistent. Your targeting rules have to have paying customers as a segment, and that will be a large flag set that's being passed to users. I just realized I skipped over the whole process part, so I'll quickly go back to that before I end. So what we saw in the demo was us as a user, we were viewing an application, and it just had one feature in it, the new nav feature. The application made a request to get the latest evaluated flags. So just give me the latest flags for this particular user, and I passed in my user identifier, so it can be like an ID, user ID or something, and my attributes, so like my demography, age, whatever. And what the feature flag service does is it evaluates the flags, and an evaluation is basically a function on the context provided from the user and the rules that exist in the flag store. And after evaluating, going through all the targeting rules, seeing which targeting rule matches, we pass the evaluated flag set to the application, and that's what the user sees. So that's the whole flow. Yep.
So essentially, like in our rules, we basically, if someone has the trait like value of blue, and the old, they're red,
exactly. Yeah, it's the opposite way, the opposite condition, but exactly. So you can set a bunch of targeting rules. Like a lot of feature management services, they have a bunch of evaluation strategies. I won't go into this, but the most commonly used one is the first picked. So like the first rule that gets matched, that's what you serve the users. So the first rule that's matched is what is served to users. Yeah, so that's all I have. If you have any questions, ask on the course forum. I'll be monitoring it. Or you can contact me directly. I'll set up a little consultation meeting. It's usually on Thursdays. Today's one is booked out, but next week it should be good. Yeah, and Flagbase is open source. If you're using Flagbase and if you want to improve it, like raise a PR. It's there for you to all use. And yeah, I think I'll hand over back to Nick. But yeah, that's it for me.
Any questions?
Oh yeah, any questions? Yeah. Sweet. All right.